All right, so just as I was saying with this pair, this high price has taken out this high. All right, so in order for us to confirm that really price will go up, push up, targeting these highs and all that, we wait to see price retest at the previous high. All right, yeah. So going into next week, that will be my expectation on this pair. That would definitely be my expectation on this pair. I will expect to see price come down into this area, and I mean I'm expecting this price action to happen either on Monday or Tuesday. All right, I'm expecting to see if definitely price will shoot up. I'll expect to see this sell, that is this down movement, on Monday or Tuesday landing session. If I don't see this on Monday or Tuesday landing session, that means price has taken a different form, and so I'll just leave off this plan. Yeah, so that is it for this pair. Let's quickly go to odd USD. Okay, so this is it for odd USD. So odd USD on a weekly standpoint, all right, it broke structure here. All right, it broke structure here. First of all, what it did was it broke the structure, came back to retest, moved up to break the structure. All right, price has come back to the structure. All right, and one thing you should know is it failed to even break this swing low. All right, you've seen price failing to break this swing low by seeing a rejection right at the tip of this very line in here. All right, so my next target, or what I'll be looking forward, is for price to take off this high. All right, price to take off this high, then maybe this high too as well, but currently this is my target. All right, so going into next week, this is what I'll be expecting. All right, so as you can see, price has broken the structure here. This is another block, a bullish order block. All right, that is a down close candle prior to price moving up. So as you can see, this candle came to retest this other block here, and it shoots up. It didn't come back here again. So going into next week, right, this high has been broken. All right, this high has been broken, and you are seeing price trying to retest this zone. All right, you are seeing price trying to retest this zone. But look at what happened here. Let's look at what happened here. This is another block. All right, price broke the structure, came back to this other block, and moved up. All right, now this structure has been broken. This structure has been broken, and we have another block here. All right, so going into next week, I'll expect to see price come back, clear this liquidity here, tap into this other block before it moves up. Yeah, that will be my expectation on this pair going into next week, because it will be very dangerous for me to take my entry here. Why? Because there is liquidity resting below this line. All right, and once there is liquidity resting here, market makers can easily read this liquidity before they move up. So going into next week, and basically on an up movement week, all right, if you're analyzing a pair and then you anticipate bullishness for that pair, all right, you need to see the low of the week. All right, price will have to make the low of the week before it moves up. All right, and so by making the low of the week, normally it makes the low of the week either on Tuesday or Wednesday. All right, Monday is normally a Judah swing. Yes, so on Monday I will expect to see price. I will expect to see some level of sales. Yeah, I will expect to see some level of sales to this point. Expect to see some level of sales to this point before I consider taking buys. All right, because see, look at what happened here too. All right. Prior to price moving up, it came back to clear this liquidity in here. All right. That was a very sharp move to the upside. So if the structure has been broken, price should come back into this area to retest this other block you are seeing here before it moves up. So going into next week, I will expect this price action to play out, then shoot up. So this will be my expectation on this pair going into next week. Yeah, so that is it for AUD/USD. So let's quickly move to NZD/USD and see what is going on in there. So this pair on a weekly standpoint, this is what is happening. There was a break in market structure, all right, and then price heading to the structure to retest it, all right. It hasn't really completed yet, all right. It hasn't really completed yet. So going into next week, taking buys on this sell is close to impossibility for me going into next week, because I mean, we saw a break in structure here. The next thing we should see is price returning to that structure to retest it before it moves up, which it hasn't done so. All right. And I mean, there is so much liquidity resting in here. This liquidity has been taken out. All right. Price failed to come here, making this swing low a very major swing low. All right. So I would be on a watch and see how price will react going into Monday. All right, because currently I'm not so decisive on this bet. I'm not so decisive on this bet due to how it is playing out. So I will really see how price will react when it gets here. And again, we've seen some form of rejection in here. All right, price trying to break the structure by couldn't. All right, and has rejected. All right, so definitely this low will likely be taken out. This low will likely be taken out. So going into next week, I'll be very observant. See how this pair will react, especially on Monday. All right. So if there will be sales on this pair going into next week, all right, going into next week, price will have to make the high of the week. All right, price will have to make the high of the week, and most of the times, what price will do is on Monday, just as I said, Monday is normally a Judas swing. Monday is normally a Judas swing, and we are seeing some form of liquidity up here. So on Monday, I'll expect to see this price come back into this other block. All right, before come here, before it shoots to the downside. All right, so if there will be sales on this pair, this will be my expectation. All right, because we have another block here. All right, this is a bearish order block, but this was the last up close candle prior to a sharp movement to the downside. All right, so taking a trade here next week is going to be dangerous. All right, it's going to be dangerous because there is liquidity resting here, and so taking a trade here wouldn't be advisable for me. So I'm going to wait to see this happen before I take it to the downside. All right, if I don't see this happening, then I have to wait and see price come back to this area. Then I'll see some price action form before I take a decision on it. So basically, that is my expectation going into next week on this very particular pair. All right, that is my expectation going into next week on this very particular pair. So let's move to NZD JPY2 and see what is going on. So this pair on a weekly standpoint, okay, so you saw a break in market structure. Price came back to the structure and then moved up to clear the liquidity here and came back again to this area. You've seen some level of rejection in your price trying to move to the upside. So basically on the weekly on this pair is looking bullish. All right, let's quickly go to the daily and see what is happening in there. But look at what's happening daily. Look at what is happening. It is very undecisive. Why? Because we've seen some level of consolidations in here. Yeah, very undecisive on the daily. Very undecisive, some consolidation. So from a daily standpoint, this pair is consolidating. Right? This pair is consolidating. I mean, it's whenever you are taking a trade in an area of consolidation, you should be very careful. You should be very careful because this is an undecisive area. You don't know as to whether price is moving up or moving down. All right, so you should be very careful. You should know your high or your low on this pair. All right, so on a daily standpoint, this is in consolidation. Let's look at what is happening on the 4 hour. Okay, so this is what is happening on the 4 hour. Look at what just happened. Price came down here, moved up to this level and rejected it. All right, price rejected, failed to break this level, and then moved down again and moved up. All right, this time around to it failed to what, to even get closer to this area. All right, so that means there is a much sell pressure in here. All right, there is a much sell pressure in here. So going into next week, this will be my range high, this will be my range low. So even if I'll trade this pair, even if we will trade this pair, we are going to limit. Our limit is going to be, we are going to trade in between this range high, and then this range low. All right, let's move to the 1 hour to see things clearer. So as you can see, this area liquidity has already been grabbed. All right, liquidity has already been grabbed, and so if price moves back, then that means it will break this zone. It will break this line. All right, and as you can see, there are so many liquidity down here. There is a lot of liquidity down in here. All right, so going into next week, it is very likely, it is very likely for me to see sells. All right, and so by seeing sells, I would like to see this swing low being broken. All right, I would like to see this swing low being broken. I would like to see this swing low being broken, and then once it breaks, I would like to see price come back to this area before it moves down. All right, and I mean this is an area of liquidity. So once it moves down, it breaks this area, this candle becomes a breaker. Sorry, this candle rather, yeah. This candle becomes a breaker. Yeah, this candle becomes a breaker. So I would like to see if definitely it will break. I would like to see a breaking this structure or this swing low, price returning to this low before it shoots down. All right, and once it gets down, I'm sure that will be the beginning of the bullishness of this pair breaking that daily high we saw there. All right, so that is my expectation on NZDJPY. Quickly, let's look at GBP USD. So this is what is happening. So let's just look at GBP USD on a weekly standpoint. Okay, so similar behavior. Similar behavior. Price broke the structure. Price broke the structure. Came back and then pulled up. All right, so we saw a push up, seeing some form of rejection in here. All right, so from a weekly standpoint, GBP USD is looking very bullish from a weekly standpoint. All right, let's quickly go to the daily and see what is happening in there. So from the daily price attempted breaking this zone. This is a bearish order block. Yeah, this is a bearish order block, and as a matter of fact, bearish order blocks on higher time frames are very powerful, to the extent that whenever price gets to that area, we need to see some level of reaction, and we saw it here. Price failed to break this block, rejecting into the downside. All right, and so by rejecting to the downside, we could see that we have some level of stops. All right, we have some stops in here. We have some stops in here. Yes, we have some stops in here, for which I think for price to continue to go up, it will come in and clear these stops before it goes up. All right, and so if next week we will take sell, because I'm seeing a potential sell on this pair. All right, I'm seeing a potential sell on this pair, and so if next week they are going to take a sell on this pair, this is another block. All right, a bearish order block. All right, and so it's not going to be good for us to take a sell anywhere around this place. All right, anywhere around this place. This is Friday's high. All right, so going into next week, I'll expect to see price take out this high. All right, take out this high and then come here into the other block before we see down movement. All right, before we see down movement. So that is my expectation. All right, that is my expectation. If price fails to come up and continues to sell, this swing low will be my area to watch. All right, this swing low will be my area to watch. This swing low, it didn't come here. Yeah, this swing low will be my area to watch. All right, so if it happens that way, I need to wait and see a break. I need to wait and see a break in this. Come here before I take myself. So that is it for GBP USD. So going into next week, I'll be on the watch to see all these things playing out before I take decisions on what to do. So let's quickly go to Euro USD. So Euro USD on a weekly standpoint, this is what is happening. There was a break in market structure. As you can see, this was a previous high. All right, price broke through that previous high, and once the previous high is broken, you expect to see price come back to that previous high to retest it before we move up. All right, so at the moment, the next draw on liquidity will be here and then here as well. All right, those are the areas of the next draw on liquidity, but I'm not seeing perfect touch. All right, price tried to come to that zone that was this week, but I couldn't get here. All right, so I wouldn't be in a rush to take buys on this pair as soon as possible. All right, I need to see certain things before I'll go ahead and take the buy, because on the weekly, our expectation on the weekly hasn't been met. Yes, our expectation on the weekly hasn't been met. And so going into next week, I wouldn't be surprised if this low is cleared. All right, if this low is cleared. So this low was last week's low. All right, I wouldn't be surprised to see this low being cleared before we start seeing some buys. All right, before we start seeing some buys in here. Yeah, so that is my expectation on this pair. So I'll be on the sidelines for Euro USD next week, and I'll just observe how price is going to react. Yeah, before I decide on whatever that I want to do. So let's quickly look at GBP JPY. Let's quickly look at GBP JPY too and see. So this pair on a weekly standpoint, okay, so there was a break in the market structure. This high price came back to retest it, but wasn't really a perfect retest. All right, but we realized that for 2 weeks now, this was last 2 weeks candle. It failed to get here. The last 3 weeks candles also failed to get here. So that means price is what will definitely push up. And I wouldn't expect it to come here, because for 2 consecutive weeks it failed to come here. All right. So going into next week, this will be my expectation. All right. This high has been broken. All right. That is the previous high has been broken. This high has been also broken. All right, this high has been broken. So I would expect to see price come back to that zone. All right, I would expect to see price come back to this zone. Yeah, this will be my point of focus, not here. Yeah, I would expect price to come back to this zone before I take buys on this pair. Yes, before I take buys on. So going into next week, this will be my expectation. I expect to see price come back to this zone before I decide on what to do. Yeah, so that is it for my expectation going into next week. That is definitely that for my expectations going into next week.